Comic Book Savant, episode 305.
I know this. This I know. All that I have, all that is me, resides inside my poetry. And every time I write a rhyme, it might be the line that sets mine free. And also, I know that I don't.
Welcome to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, as I spoke about last week in the State of the Show update, that I'm playing catch up on a lot of older content that I missed over the past 2 months. So you're going to be flooded with some older reviews from some of the comic book related summer movies. So we're going to be starting this week off with my review of Suicide Squad. I know tons of you have probably already seen the movie. The movie's been out over a month and a half at this point, but I still wanted to get my thoughts in on the movie. But before we get into that, and will be a spoiler filled review. So if you're one of the few people that didn't go see Suicide Squad yet, you definitely want to stop the podcast now, come back later to after you've seen the movie, unless you don't mind being spoiled. But before I get into all that, as always, give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, which is nstocktrades.com, one of the best places online to get your collected editions, omnibus, Marvel Masterwork editions, Absolute editions, any type of collected form of comics in the physical form. In Stock Trades is one of the best places, your one-stop shop for getting most of this stuff. Excuse me. You get discounts up to 35, 45, and for their deals of the week that they have displayed on the front page of the website, you can get up to 50% off. Any orders that you hit $50 or more, you get free shipping. That only applies to U.S. customers. So if you do live outside of the U.S., don't worry. You can still partake upon the savings. And they have some of the cheapest and most competitive international shipping rates around. So you can still get some of the savings. You just don't get the extra bonus of the free shipping within the U.S. Just looking at some of their deals of the week that they have going on right now, they have the Fix Volume 1 trade paperback, 50% off, only $4.99. They have also Harley Quinn hardcover Volume 5. That is 50% off, only $12.49. They have Marvel Masterworks Fantastic Four hardcover Volume 8. And that is $37.50 at 50% off. So that's a great savings right there, because those can be very expensive if you collect the classic Marvel Masterworks. They're beautiful editions, but they can be pricey. So getting those 50% off really helps a ton. They have Punisher War Journal by Carl Potts and Jim Lee, 50% off, only $19.99. They also have the Titans Hunt miniseries collected in trade paperback, 50% off, only $9.99. So they have some good deals going on this week, so definitely check them out. It's easy to hit that $50 threshold if you pick up a couple of these deals, especially if you do something like the Marvel Masterworks and one of the other trades. It's easy to hit that $50 mark, so definitely check out nstocktrades.com. Let them know that you heard about them from this podcast. And last but not least, I have to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. Just a good place, a good melting pot, as I always like to describe it. If you like comic book related podcasts, if you enjoy this show, if you enjoy comic books in general, it's a place that you can go. It's a good landing spot, a good portal to find additional podcasts. There's literally hundreds of different comic book and geek culture related podcasts there. So you can go there, take a look, see what's around, and see if you can find, if you like this show and you want to drill down on something more specific to a specific book or a team book, individual character, particular publisher, you can find that all at the Comics Podcast Network. So if you have a moment, check them out at comicspodcast.com. Now, down to the meat of the subject, which is Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was directed and written by David Ayer. We know him from things like Training Day. He did Fury not too long ago, the Brad Pitt. It was a tank movie, war tank movie. He's done a lot of cop-related, corrupted cop-type movies and stuff as well. He did the movie not too long ago with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sabotage. He's done a lot of those type of movies. End of Watch was another big movie that David Ayer has. So he's definitely a name in Hollywood when it comes to those type of movies. This is his first attempt at doing a comic book movie. This is really off the beaten path. He's really stayed into that cop procedural kind of lane, and he's written a ton of movies as well as he's gotten into directing more recently with some of the movies that I mentioned. So it was interesting when they picked him. I was really enthusiastic. I've loved his writing ever since I learned about him back in when he was the writer on Training Day, and I just pretty much just followed his career since. So was very excited to see this movie, just to see what his take on it was going to be. The breakdown as follows. A secret government agency recruits imprisoned supervillains to execute dangerous black ops missions in exchange for clemency. And the cast is as follows. We have Margaret Robbie as Harley Quinn. We have Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. We have Will Smith as Deadshot. We have Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. Jared Leto as the Joker. We have Cara, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Delevingne as the Enchantress. We have Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. We have Ewali Kuno Abaje as Killer Croc. We have Adam Beats as Slipknot. Jay Hernandez as El Diablo. And we have Taste Yamashiro as Katana. And I hope it is Taste. That's how it's spelled. Or Tatsi. Maybe it's Tatse. I'm going to go with Tatse. That sounds better than Taste. And this was a very divisive movie when it came out. Fans were, some people, critics kind of gave the movie a hard time. For fans, it was divisive between everybody, between critics and fans. But despite all of the kind of adversity surrounding the movie has, now is, and that's great kind of doing a review on it now, seeing the after effects of it all. It was kind of like a sleeper hit. It has now gone on to surpass even the numbers they made off of Man of Steel. And I'm pretty sure this movie had a quite substantially lower budget than what Man of Steel had. So I would think. I could be wrong on that. I'm not exactly sure, but I would think. But it's going on to be, I think as of last checking, it broke over the $600 million threshold worldwide, which is not bad. And I've really been astounded by the staying power, of the film. But, personally, me and my wife went to go see it. My wife is into comics because she's become more invested in comics based on my interest in comics and what I do and being a podcaster. So she, we go see these movies together. The only kind of primer she had, I pulled up the old episode of Justice League Unlimited where they had the Task Force X episode. And I played that for her to kind of give her a loose understanding of what the Suicide Squad was. I've collected and read some of the older issues of the John Ostrander run of Suicide Squad. I hadn't read a lot of the newer iteration when, DC had really brought them back in the forefront over the past few years. Really hadn't kept up or read much of it. So I really didn't know the current state of it. We had even an iteration of the Suicide Squad a few years ago, a couple of seasons ago, an Arrow, which I felt like they really did a good job, which Greg Berlanti pretty much came out and said in an interview a few weeks ago that, that DC or Warner Brothers came to him and was like, we want you to kind of do a test run of the Suicide Squad because we're thinking about developing it in a movie, and they incorporated it into the Arrow television show. Which was interesting, which I really liked the way they did the characters. They even, they did their take on. They didn't use the same characters. They used some more of the original characters from the group. I think the only main character that translated both over was Amanda Waller, was used, of course, as the head of Argus, and we had Deadshot also used in that group. There were no Enchantress. It wasn't a Captain Boomerang in the Suicide Squad on Arrow, but they had introduced Captain Boomerang, but I think they killed his character off, and they eventually killed the Amanda Waller character off as well. So they kind of body bagged the whole thing, and I think they did a quick cutaway of, you saw someone in the cell when they got the first group together, and it was implied from the little cutaway or the quick cut that it was Harley Quinn, and she was kind of like, they had just kind of captured her, and she was, you saw the trademark hair and heard the laugh. And that was really it. And then, pretty much again, it got phased out when I guess they decided it worked and they were going to develop that film itself. As far as about this movie, after going around the bend with those different back information, I enjoyed the movie. I had a chance to rewatch the movie in preparation of this episode. So I've seen the movie twice, and it's not, the greatest movie for me. I think probably if we look at the DC expanded universe, as far as the movies are concerned, it's probably ranked third for me, behind Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I have to specify that the Ultimate Edition. It would probably be in third place as far as how I would rank the movies, but it was a fun movie. I feel I have the same feeling coming out of this movie that I had once I came out of Batman v Superman, the theatrical cut. I feel like a lot was left on the cutting room floor, especially in regards to the whole Joker and Harley Quinn story. It definitely looked like it was a lot more, and even Jared Leto has said in many interviews since the movie was released that it was a lot of Joker scenes that were cut out of the movie. He said it was pretty much enough footage that he shot on, on location to make his own Joker movie out of it that got left on the cutting room floor. So that was something, interesting to hear. That was a lot of apprehension about not only when Jared Leto was announced as the Joker, but the look of the Joker. It all played together nicely. I felt like his interpretation of the Joker was maybe a little cross between Heath Ledger's Joker and Mark Hamill's Joker, with a more grounded gangster feel to him, which makes sense being what kind of director David Ayer is in his background. He was definitely more grounded. He was less fantastical and more street and more grounded. And I liked that. I liked his Joker, and that he was more of a, into the street crime gangster level, but very dangerous type individual, and less like the Cesar Romero from the old Batman show from the late 60s, early 70s that I grew up watching for sure. So I thought it was a good blend, and it worked for this world that Ayer set up around these characters, that it fits. And I think he actually fits in the right setting. He's no threat against how he's portrayed. I don't think he would be a threat versus Wonder Woman, Superman, those type people, but for any like street level or mid-level heroes in the DC expanded universe, you could use him on, in that level and build him up to be more dangerous, but he doesn't pose a threat to the likes of the Justice League, where you can see the Joker taking on the Justice League by any means. At this point, I couldn't see that. But it again, in a smaller type, if you're still dealing with really when you look at most of these characters in the Suicide Squad, they're like B to C level villain characters. Like he fits perfectly, could be the big foil in a movie like that. So it really worked for me. I think it was the one problem I definitely had with the movie. Some people said it felt like a big music video, like the first part of the movie. That didn't bother me. It actually was kind of working because the songs they selected were, songs from my childhood, like classic songs that I kind of grew up in hip hop and pop and things like that. So it kind of got me hyped every time a song kicked in because it was a song I knew, and it was like that was hype music when I was a kid. So that didn't bother me or took me out of the movie at all. But I think it's two competing stories, because I definitely think the whole Harley Quinn, she's clearly her and Will Smith are pretty much the two stars of this movie, Harley Quinn and Deadshot, but they're two competing stories essentially. And I really think that Harley Quinn and Joker, that part of the story could have been its own separate movie. And then like the Deadshot Enchantress part of the storyline could have been the movie in itself. It was talked about and spoke about, like a lot of reshoots happened on the movie. It was a lot of interference potentially from the studio again, which we're hearing that quite a bit between Batman v Superman and this movie, that a lot of stuff from David Ayer's cut was competing cuts of the movie. It was definitely, they said a lot of this was, David Ayer had his one cut of the movie. The studio had their cut, and then they hired the company that did the trailers, because the trailers got so much of a positive response. They had them doing their own cut of the movie. It was even leaked or spoke about that they test screened the movie in North Carolina, and it was I can't remember where in North Carolina it was that they did a test screening, and it was a completely different cut from what the theatrical cut was, and people had gone on Twitter and things like that and kind of discussed certain plot points and things that were missing or different from the cut that they had a test screening. I feel like, at this point with the studio, the amount of studio interference that has come out of these two most recent, the two movies we've had dropped this year from the DC Expanded Universe, that I kind of can't wait. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I would love to see a Suicide Squad Ultimate Edition be released so I can see more of what this original David Ayer cut was. I think the movie probably would overall flow a little bit smoother. But I definitely think that the two main storylines or plot threads of the movie, with the Harley Quinn storyline and Harley Quinn and Joker, could have been a separate movie on itself, and it would have been a really good movie that I would have liked to have seen. Compared to mixing it in, because it felt like it was underserved by the inclusion of the additional storyline, which the Deadshot storyline, or the main movie storyline, was decent, and it took away from us getting to really know all the characters. So I felt like certain characters were shortchanged. I feel like I would have liked to see more Amanda Waller, but again, you had to sacrifice certain stuff to include the Joker and his connection to Harley, and seeing those flashbacks and things, and that time that you dedicated, even though Jared Leto was in a movie a lot less than what I thought he was going to be, based on they made him in the forefront in the trailers, as well as most of the advertisement leading into the movie, as far as posters and everything else, as far as their ad junket. Like, they pushed that he was in a movie, so I was kind of disappointed he was in a movie so little. I thought he might have been integrated more into the main story than what he was, but that's Hollywood. We're seeing that happen more and more later, but I definitely really enjoyed his take on the Joker. I wish I just could have seen more of it to get a real overall grasp, but I think he did his kind of amalgamation, putting his own touches on it, and I really liked it, and would like to see more of it. One thing I didn't like, and maybe it's just me, I don't care at this point that much for Joel Kinnaman. Going back to the RoboCop remake, to this, and I've seen him pop up in a few other things, and it's just, I don't know. I think about Rick Flag, and like I said, going into viewing the movie for the first time, I watched the Justice League Unlimited episode and how Rick Flag was portrayed there. Like he was really this tough as nails, kind of like a Captain America with a gun, kind of. And he was this this BA dude, and it was just like, he was so squirmy and slimy and like a punk to me. He came off just very punkish. And he just didn't vibe with me. I did not care for his character at all. Even the second time, I just thought he was really a weak character. And maybe it was the way it was written. Maybe it was the way it's portrayed. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I just haven't liked him in roles that he's played that I've seen him in at this point. He just didn't work for me in that role. And I go back to thinking that, at one point Tom Hardy was supposed to play this role, and I think he would have been portrayed way differently if that was the case. And I kind of would have preferred to see his Rick Flag more than Joel Kinnaman, but it is what it is. And, everyone, I'm not going to, delve into this too much, but Cara Delevingne portrayal as the Enchantress, I don't think it was her fault. More so, it was the way the character was written. But everybody's, the whole hula hooping type of hula dancer stuff going on, it just didn't work. And it was like laughable funny. It bothered me less the second viewing of the movie. The first time was like really jarring and like laugh out loud funny, in the scenes that she was in. But I really think it was, it was how the character was written more so than her performance of the character. Again, I felt like Jai Courtney was great in the very few scenes he was in. He's super underutilized in the movie because he was very comical. His take on Captain Boomerang was something I didn't expect. It was vastly different from what we got of Captain Boomerang in the comics, of course. And even, this is one thing that I feel like Flash and Arrow nailed, because I think when they did Captain Boomerang, he was like a military guy. He was like super serious. They did a really good take where they kept some of the bait premise from what we knew of Captain Boomerang in the comic, but you couldn't have the ridiculous outfit, but they made him like this real BA Black Ops dude that had serious training, and I really liked the take on it, but they killed his character off, which was just bad. So I felt like for this kind of movie and how they had this ragtag group, I liked this take that they came up with for him, and it fits. And he's like super comic relief, but he was just not built up properly. Again, like I said, he was one of the characters that kind of got sacrificed in the sake of time for really putting the emphasis on the Harley Quinn in the Joker storyline. Like he really, wasn't not given the time to shine as much as he probably should have. Killer Croc was I was surprised they used him as comic relief. He had just a handful of lines throughout the whole movie, but when he spoke, it was really out of the blue funny. I think the one character that really surprised me, I didn't know much of anything about it, but I really loved Jay Hernandez as El Diablo. I like the fact that how they gave him a full story arc where we didn't get that with Killer Croc or Boomerang. You got more of a story arc than you needed to with Enchantress, I felt like, which I didn't really care about her character. And I pretty much had surmised from the trailers early on that she was going to be the big bad of the movie. And I was like, how the trailers were cut, they gave that away way too soon. I didn't know how it, tied to some of the other elements, especially when they kept showing in the trailer the clip of the monster, like protruding himself through like the subway train and stuff like that. I kind of figured, or guessed that she was going to have something to do with it. So her story arc, but they tied it to Rick Flag. It was what it was. But I could have did with a lot less of that and more Killer Croc or El Diablo. And I wish they would have given a little bit more explanation about Katana. I really thought the actress was kind of cool and gave a really cool vibe to Katana, but I felt like I really learned nothing about her to being vested on where they go next. Whatever, I would like to see the character again and utilized way better. But yeah, I think the biggest surprise of the movie, if you look at all the characters and all the actors, that I didn't expect much from the El Diablo character, and he became like he was a real bright spot, in the movie. Jay Hernandez, like the human turmoil and the torture he was kind of putting himself throughout the movie. Like you really felt that throughout the story, and he became a very sympathetic character, even though he's a very bad person. You can see that that turn of redemption that he was going throughout the movie. As far as the performance, as far as the action, it was some really good action scenes. I really loved the Deadshot stuff, especially the scene where he jumps on the car and you're, seeing him use his trademark wrist guns. That was an awesome scene. I really, really, really liked the scene where Amanda Waller comes to Belle Reve and they want to see him, do at the gun range. That was a really cool scene. I really enjoyed the action, but again, David Ayer does gunplay extremely well. I think, the special effects were fine. I just think the villains, you needed a nondescript something that they could shoot a lot of and beat up really, beat up a lot. So it was kind of meh on that side. Like I said, it wasn't a perfect movie. It had its flaws in different areas. I think the action was fine. The CGI was fine, but just how they built those creatures and how they looked on screen, it was a nondescript thing for them to blow up. I like how they did the overlays and the introduction of the characters, in the beginning of the movie. That was fun, and it gave it a lot of energy. I just think that last act of the movie, was meh, and it kind of hurt it overall and kind of hurt my rating of the movie, especially in seeing it the second time. But I do like the group, and I would have liked them maybe to see them go on something a little different type mission and really get into the camaraderie of this ragtag bunch and how they got along. I wish it could have been more focused on that, but they're DC is in a bad position of is trying to catch up to Marvel, which is going to be a consistent uphill battle, and it's so much they have to deal with, and there's so much other stuff they have to set up. They've already pretty much have pretty much said that Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie, throughout the whole production of this movie, and after she researched the character, really fell in love with the character. I really like her take on the character as well. And she's stunning. And, Harley Quinn was always drawn as a very attractive, bubbly personality. And I just feel like she nailed that. And I think a lot of, fans themselves responded to that as well. So, it's already talks that they're going to, she's going to get a solo movie. We probably will see Joker, pop up again. It's, maybe he'll pop up in the Affleck standalone, Batman movie. Batman did have it. I didn't mention this in the cast, but then Ben Affleck made, in the different cut scenes, he was involved, quite a bit. So he definitely had I guess it was more than a cameo. So he did have a role in the movie Batman, because he took down in the flashback, brought in Deadshot, and they had him in the whole Joker Harley Quinn flashback as well. So he had a substantial, he had about 5 to 7 minutes on screen. So maybe that's a little bit bigger than a cameo. So, they have to set up and lay the foundation for so many other things. I feel like the concept of the Suicide Squad did not get exhibited as well as it should have through this movie. So let me get to my score, and then I'm going to elaborate on that point a little bit. I feel like for me, you guys know my scale. I do it a little bit differently, but I'm going to start doing another element where I will equate what I'm telling you to a number score so you can kind of hone down and get a better idea. For me, this movie is a date night rental, which puts it, between an 8 and a 7 on the rating scale, which I would say I would probably give it a 7.25. I can't give it a 7.5. Can't give it a 7. So I feel like a 7.25 is kind of right where it needs to be for this movie for me. Like I said, I've seen it twice, so I liked it enough. It should be coming out on home video probably soon. I would imagine if not in September, we probably get released sometime between now and Halloween. I think the biggest problem, and one of the things I kind of said in the introduction, if you saw the post for the episode, is that where does this fit in the DC expanded universe and as a franchise? I think because you can spin out characters most definitely with Harley Quinn, Amanda Waller, Deadshot, even the Joker. And, we saw the brief cameo by Ezra Miller taking down Captain Boomerang. And that was super brief. So that was a cameo if I've ever seen one. I feel like those characters definitely we could see again in the expanded universe. Would they, or should they make a sequel to Suicide Squad? And I think David Ayer even said as much. He would like to do another one. I feel like with the money they've made, they've earned it, and I would like to see them do it and kind of back away from him and give him a little bit more freedom to make the Suicide Squad movie he would want to make. I think since you've set up the characters like Harley Quinn and Joker now, you don't necessarily, especially how the movie ended with the Joker breaking Harley Quinn out, you don't have to have them in, and you can focus more on on the team itself and its dynamics, and add some new characters and to replace characters that were lost in the last movie, and kind of let Amanda kind of come to the forefront. That I would like to see it. Will they do it? It's hard to tell. There's been no announcements if they're going to do a second movie at this point. Would they feel like they could do it without Harley Quinn and the Joker being in the movie? I think they can, but I don't know if they feel like they would need that cachet to make sure they get butts and seats by having to pin those characters in there. I think, as long as you still have Deadshot around, if you have him one thing I do say I did like in the second viewing, I do love the chemistry, the offset in personalities and the chemistry between Will Smith and Joel Kinnaman. So I could see a movie with them headlining it and it actually working. And I think people were really surprised on how good Will Smith was back doing an action movie after years kind of being away from the genre. So I could see in a sequel them headlining it, kind of using them as the trinity for the Suicide Squad with Amanda Waller, Deadshot and Rick Flag, and then just have, bring back Killer Croc, Boomerang. They're still around. Add a few other, characters known to the history of the Suicide Squad that they're not using. Put them in and really build those characters up and really nail that so they could make this a franchise. I could see, because it's a perfect setup. It's the Suicide Squad. You're going to lose people on each mission, but as long as you kind of keep the core the same and keep those actors in place, I think they could really make even more money going forward if the story in the next one isn't as muddled and is more concise and better executed. I feel like it could clearly be a big thing for them. I don't think it has reached the potential, even though it's made a ton of money. I think the following movies, if done right, could make even more. I think all this, the foundation is there. They just have to execute and nail it. Again, I don't know when they would do a sequel and how it would fit in with they have so many movies at various stages of production to come out. Like when will we honestly see a Suicide Squad sequel, unless they, would, try to fast track something, but I at the looks of it, we're at the end of 2016. They haven't announced anything about it yet. Robbie's already talked about, trying to do this Harley Quinn movie, which, I think we'll probably hear sometime soon if that's going to happen, and, when production might start on that. So, it would probably be, like 3 or 4 years before we potentially would even get this movie, at this point, because we got, Wonder Woman, Justice League 1, or whatever they're calling it now. You would assume they're in some form of production on Aquaman. So there's a lot of other stuff that they have to kind of get out first. So it would be hard to seeing that sequel anytime soon, just of the logistics surrounding it. I wouldn't see it happening quickly. But it's Warner Brothers is a huge studio and a huge company, so it's not like they couldn't make it happen if they wanted to. I just wouldn't see when they could fit it on the schedule to get it out. And I think one of the worst crimes now, so many sequels coming out way too late, and I wouldn't want to see this be a victim of it. And I would think for it to be any chance for it to be successful, it would have to come out no later in the next 3 years. We're talking about this movie would have to be poised to come out either late, 2019, early 2020 at the most. Anything later than that, I think it's a wash, because, these characters and these main actors would have to be seen again in some other movie sometime before then to keep that interest alive to where people would want to see another Suicide Squad movie. But that's basically it. That's it. Where I'm saying it's a date night rental. It's a solid movie, 7.25. I definitely, if you're a fan of comic book movies and you're a collector, when it comes out on home video, for me, it's definitely, I enjoyed it enough where I would definitely pick that up and add it to my collection for sure. As always, check out the sponsor over at InStockTrades.com. Check out my family over at the Comics Podcast Network, comicspodcast.com. You can find me at the website, which is Comic Book Savant, all one word, .com, on Twitter and Instagram, and all that kind of stuff. All the social media should be at Comic Book Savant. And that's all I got for you guys this week. I'll be back next week with another episode. Next week, looks like I'm going to do the TV because fall TV is about to hit. And like I said, I'm catching up with all these episodes I had lined up for you guys for the past 2 months, so it would have been more timely. Now I'm kind of rushed because I think by the time you would get next week's episode, we would have received the first fall show, the first episode anyway, of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So episode 306 that'll be out next week will probably be TV talk, fall TV, preview. So we can talk about some of these shows because they're all about to premiere in the next, 2 to 3 weeks. So that will probably be the topic for next episode's show. So be on the lookout for that. Again, hit me on social media. I will see you guys next time for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys take care and have a good week.
And into lyrical wholeness. And I know this. This I know.